Hey, this is really good news. Democrats have unveiled a bill proposing full decriminalization of drug possession, as well as expunging the records of many who have already been convicted along those lines. And we've been talking about this for a very long time. We have talked about the racist origins of the war on drugs, which I will get to in a moment. We've talked about a lot of other issues related to this, including the way that police departments depend on enforcing many of these laws in order to sustain themselves financially. We've talked about private prisons. We've talked about all of these different things. And then there was a question, well, what are we going to see from Democrats under Joe Biden along these lines? And we have now learned that there is a really comprehensive bill that has been proposed. So let's go through it. Newsweek reporting, a bill to end criminal penalties for drug possession at the federal level was unveiled by Democrats yesterday, ahead of the 50th anniversary of President Richard Nixon declaring the war on drugs. The Drug Policy Reform Act, DPRA, would decriminalize personal use possession of all scheduled drugs, including marijuana, heroin, and cocaine, and automatically expunge records and provide for resentencing for those serving time for certain drug-related arrests. Now, I know many people will say, David, this isn't perfect. We need legalization instead of decriminalization, and we need to expunge all. We're talking about major progress. If this were to pass, it's already a major step forward. There would still be more to do, but let's actually go. Let's take these steps. It would also prohibit the denial of employment, immigration status, public benefits, voting rights, and more based upon criminal history for drug possession. The legislation proposed by Representatives Cori Bush of Missouri and Bonnie Watson Coleman of New Jersey also called for the country to address substance abuse with more health-centered approaches. Very, very important. June 17th will mark 50 years since Nixon designated drugs as, quote, America's public enemy number one. Can you imagine? Since then, drug offenses have become the leading cause of arrests in the U.S., according to the Drug Policy Alliance. In 2019, more than 1.5 million arrests were made due to drug violations. Under the DPRA, authority and criteria for the classification of substances would shift from the U.S. Attorney General to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. This could be a really big deal in terms of actual rescheduling. It's not just about decriminalization. It's also about rescheduling of drugs. Importantly, the bill would also direct the HHS to establish a grant program supporting initiatives that expand access to substance abuse treatment. This is really simple, guys. We should treat this issue like a public health issue, not a criminal issue. And if you go back to the origins of the war on drugs, and then you look at the genesis and the catalysts that led to it, you end up understanding also, by the way, if you go back even further to prohibition of alcohol early in the 20th century, the enforcement of the prohibition of these drugs may well lead to more crime than it prevents. I don't think it's exaggerated to say that. And you would have thought maybe we learned that during alcohol prohibition in the United States. There were decades between that and Nixon launching the war on drugs, so maybe it was just too long. The war on drugs also justifies police departments asking for a ton of money to fight drugs. When you task police departments with fighting, possession of drugs, the idea of fighting that criminally is crazy. But when you task them with that, they can justify significantly larger budgets. So while I am not a defund the police guy, I'm a reform and fix the police guy. One of the really interesting things about this is that the war on drugs justifies higher funding levels for police, and then the need to root out drug possession is used as a reason to erode privacy rights, public safety across the board. Listen, we've got to be, if we're police and we need to fight drug possession as a criminal issue, we should be monitoring phone calls related to drug deals. We need to be monitoring and surveilling the internet for drug deals. We need to be able to search houses on suspicion of drugs. We shot him because he had drugs, or we suspected that he had drugs or planned to sell them. How many times have we heard that? And when you go back to the genesis of this, the war on drugs was created partially in response to the direction that civil rights were going and had gone in the United States, starting with the civil rights movement, late 50s into the 60s. The idea was we need a different way. This was the right saying it. We need a different way to control so-called undesirable populations and to be able to, when we want to, when we need to, deny certain populations of rights. And this is not an unfortunate side effect of the drug war, which was otherwise well-intentioned. This was the point. It's a feature and not a bug. And in 1994, John Ehrlichman said to Harper's journalist Dan Baum, quote, "The Nixon campaign in 68 and the White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people." You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders. We could raid their homes. We could break up their meetings, vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? He asked. Of course we did. There's no question about the origins of this. Step one, and this is just, it's really just step one of many, is we need full decriminalization. We need to expunge as many of those records as possible. Democrats have proposed it. We'll talk later in the week or early next about what is the chance that this really moves forward and becomes law. But let me know your thoughts. How significant do you think this would be? I think it would be extraordinarily significant. If you disagree or you agree, let me know. You can find me on Twitter at @dpakman. One of our sponsors is Magic Spoon breakfast cereal, sweet and delicious like the cereals we loved as kids, but without the sugar and without the carbs. Magic Spoon tastes just like those sugary cereal brands we know and love, but it's only 140 calories, 0 grams of sugar, only 4 net carbs, and packed with 13 to 14 grams of protein. So it's perfect for anyone following a keto or low carb diet, or just anyone who wants to avoid sugar, like me. You can choose from flavors like cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, blueberry, cinnamon, or build your own variety box. If you don't love Magic Spoon as much as I do, they'll give you all of your money back, no questions asked. That is how much Magic Spoon believes in their product. You'll get $5 off when you go to magicspoon.com/Pakman and use the coupon code Pakman. I've put the link right underneath this video.